Kirkland's has some really beautiful fall items. However, I believe that we can recreate some of these items for a fraction of the cost using dollar store supplies. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is the fourth episode in my Fall 2023 series. If you missed any previous episodes, make sure to check out the playlist in my description box below. For our first project, Kirkland's has this fall clip picture frame. It has a wood slat design. It measures 10 inches by 6.5 inches. It's $16.99, and it has a beautiful leaf accent. Now, I think we can recreate this for a lot less. I'm going to start by using a scrap piece of wood that I already have on hand. Now, Dollar Tree does sell some wood pieces, so you could certainly get that at Dollar Tree. My piece measures 8.5 inches, and it is about a 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to give this a coat of Waverly's Antique Wax. While that's still wet, I'll take a dry paper towel to blend it in and remove the excess. I'm going to do the entire piece, including both of the ends. We're going to set that to the side, let it dry, and we're using one of Dollar Tree's laser wood leaf cutouts. Now, they have a couple of different designs. I chose this one. I'm going to give this 2 coats of a pumpkin acrylic paint, and I will paint both sides of this. And I'm also using this mini metal clip. This came off of one of Dollar Tree's corrugated metal signs that I made a previous DIY with. I removed it, and of course I always save everything. So I'm going to give this a coat of black paint. Now, I do recommend that you seal this in with some Mod Podge after your paint dries to keep your paint from chipping off, and I am using a black chalk paint. We're also going to be using one of Dollar Tree's wood slat decor pieces. This is the barcode if you guys need it. This is fairly thick, and it measures about 7 inches by 4 3/4 inches. Now, I've already marked my center so that I'll be able to add my clip. So I just like to start the screw, then I'll take it back out, so it'll be much easier for me to screw this in through the clip. So we'll attach that, and then we're going to take our bottom piece that is already dried, and we're going to attach our wood slat decor piece on top of that using some Gorilla Hot Glue and place it off more to the right-hand side. So it should look something like this. Then we can add in our painted wood leaf cutout, and I'm going to do that using some hot glue as well. So I had mine leaning more toward the stem and then the right side of the leaf, just like our inspiration piece. Now, you could add a photo in there, but I thought it would be cute to take one of Dollar Tree's calendars and cut the fall design off of the back. You could add this directly to your clip, but if you wanted this piece to be used annually all throughout the year, instead of placing that leaf there, you could take one of Dollar Tree's burlap sticker flowers and put that in place of the leaf. Then you would be able to change these out all throughout the seasons. Each year, Dollar Tree has some of these wood pieces like pumpkins, eggs, trees. So this is something that you could add to it to change throughout the seasons. So I'm going to use this pumpkin. I'm going to fill in the hole there at the top using some wood filler, let that dry, sand it down, and I'm going to give this a coat of the Waverly Antique Wax so that it matches our base. Now, when you use wood filler, it tends to not take the antique wax as well, so I just like to add a little extra in that spot, let it dry so that it will blend in. Now, once your antique wax dries, you can take some Mod Podge and apply this to the back of that calendar piece, and then we can attach this directly to our wood cutout. So this would be so pretty to be able to change throughout the seasons, and that's just an option, or you could just put a beautiful family photo in there. Our next Kirkland inspired piece is this white textured pumpkin framed art for $29.99. Now they also have a leaf design, and these are 21 inches by 21 inches. Now ours will be slightly smaller since I'm starting off by using a Dollar Tree canvas, and the size I'm using is an 8 by 10. Now you could get a larger canvas and recreate this in a larger form. I'm going to use my heavy duty staple lifter, and I have this listed in my Amazon store in my description box below if you guys are interested. It just makes it really easy to lift each one of these staples, and then you can go back and pull them all off. Now we're going to remove the canvas from the frame, and this will become the backing now. So we're going to use the back side of our frame. That's going to be the front. And I am going to give this a light sanding just to make sure everything's nice and smooth. And I'm not going to paint this. I'm going to keep it that natural wood color. Then we're going to take our canvas and we're going to flip it over and make sure it's nice and flat. And then you can freehand this, or you can use a pumpkin of your choice, the size or shape that you like. This one came from Dollar Tree, and I love the shape of it. So I'm going to line that up at the bottom right of our canvas where that first lines are, where our frame is going to go back on, and then I can trace the outline of this in pencil. Then I'm going to be painting mine using an acrylic paint in the color khaki. And if you don't particularly like this color, you could go with a lighter or darker color, just depending on what you like. I'm going to carefully go around the outline and paint this, and then also paint the rest of the canvas. And if I need to, I will touch up a few areas. I like to go in 2 different directions to make sure that the canvas is fully covered. Now that our paint has dried, we're going to be taking some spackling. Now you can find this at any of your home improvement stores. This one is supposed to go on pink and dry white. Mine is a little bit older, so it's not as bright pink as it should be. But I'm going to take a putty knife and add a nice thicker layer on there, trying not to get to the edges yet. I'm just trying to add all of that in the center and also making sure that I don't go to the outside edge of our canvas. For the stem, I'm going to use a craft stick and kind of blend that in and go to the outline of our pumpkin. And then I'll also use that to go around the outline of the bottom part of the pumpkin. So it's very important that you don't add this spackling to the bottom and the right side edge of your pumpkin, because you don't want that to interfere with when you reapply your frame. I'm just going to use that craft stick to pull from the center until I get this around the entire outline. Once you have that spackling pushed up to the edge of your outline, take a putty knife and spread it around so you have a nice even coat across the pumpkin. Once you have that spread out, use the edge corner of your putty knife to create the grooves for the pumpkin, and it will pull it up to give it some more texture. Now, if you get a little bit too much on your putty knife, just wipe that off. And then for the center, because my putty knife is too wide, I'm going to use that craft stick to start creating the textured lines in the opposite direction. Then I'll finish the rest of the pumpkin using the putty knife because it gives me more texture. Now, if you get some clumps in there, don't worry about that. You can use your craft stick to blend that in, or even later, once it dries, you could sand it off. I'm going to check once more to make sure I don't have any of that spackling where the frame's going to go back to. If I do, I'm going to push that up because I don't want that to interfere with reapplying our frame. Now, I let mine dry overnight. Now that it is completely dry, we can reattach our frame. I'm going to use some Gorilla Hot Glue on the back side of the frame, Press that very firmly and make sure that my canvas is super tight as I'm pushing that down. Then to reinforce it, I will use some staples on the back side, and again, make sure that your canvas is pulled very tightly. To remove the excess canvas, I started off using a rotary blade. This one came from Dollar Tree. I do have to go back and use my utility knife just because I think my rotary blade is very dull and I probably just need to buy a new one. But we'll trim all of the outside edges of the canvas, and this project turned out so beautiful, but I would love to know what you guys think. Our next Kirkland-inspired piece is a whitewashed acorn decoration. They have an 8-inch for $14.99 or a 5-inch for $7.99. It has some beautiful distressed look to it. If you're not into the distressed look, they also offer a natural acorn decoration. Now this project is super easy. We're going to be using one of Dollar Tree's shiny acorns. They also had a pine cone and a pumpkin. These are absolutely beautiful as is, but I do like that distressed look. Here is the barcode if you need it. Once we remove that label, I will be giving this 2 coats of white chalk paint. Now I chose chalk paint to make sure that my paint would adhere well to the shiny surface. Allow the first coat to dry and then apply your second coat. So this is how it looks after the second coat. To distress it, I will be using a dry brush, some brown acrylic paint, and I'm going to wipe most of that off and then go over a paper towel to make sure that it's just a very little bit of paint on the end of the paintbrush. I'm going to start at the stem and bring out all of the details on this acorn. Then I'll move my way down to the top part and go over each one of those details at the top. And this is how it's looking so far. It is absolutely gorgeous and so easy to do. Now the bottom half does have some grooves in it. So I'm going to use that to place my lines with my dry brushing, and then I'll go back in between each of those lines to kind of shade it in. This project was so easy, and I already had the paint, so it only cost $1.25. Our next inspiration piece is this navy truck and pumpkin floral wall plaque for $29.99. It is roughly 18 inches by 17.7 inches and has some beautiful artificial florals and pumpkins on there. Now Dollar Tree carries several different truck signs. Here I'm showing you one from the fall and one for Halloween. I think for this project the Halloween shape will work better. So I'm going to remove the witch's hat from the pumpkin as well as the metal piece that's on the back and the hanger. And I'm also going to peel up all of the paper from the front of the sign. Luckily, all of this paper came off really easy. Now to make the shape of our sign resemble more of our inspiration piece, we need to cut off some of these pieces at the top. So I'm just going to freehand and draw out the design to best resemble the one from Kirkland's. And for the window portion, I have this wood piece. This came from Hobby Lobby in a pack with different shaped wood designs. I'm going to use this to draw an outline, then flip it over and draw the outline on that side, and this will give us the perfect size and shape for the window. Now I'm going to set my sign on a cutting board and using a utility knife, score the lines that I've drawn about 3 or 4 times, and then you'll easily be able to pop off that extra piece. And if you have some extra, you can trim it up with your utility knife, but if you can't get all of it, don't worry about it. We're going to sand it later. Do the exact same thing on the other side. Now for the window, you will have to score that multiple times. I think I scored it about 10 times to make sure I got at least halfway through the sign, because you don't want to break it when you're trying to get that center piece out. So I just took the end of a hammer, and I am actually very gently tapping this to break it right there at the outline, because I want to make sure I don't break the actual truck sign. And then once that pops out, if you have any extra, again, you can trim that up with your utility knife or use some sandpaper. So I'm going to go over everything with the sandpaper to make sure it's nice and smooth and there aren't any jagged edges. And I'm also going to take that sandpaper over the front of the sign to make sure that I have removed all that excess paper so our paint will have a nice smooth finish. Now I know our inspiration piece is navy, but I chose to paint mine with a black chalk paint because that better suits my decor. This will only take one coat, and I also made sure to paint the inside of the window as well as the entire outside edges of the sign. So while that's drying, we're going to take one of Dollar Tree's jumbo craft sticks. This one measures about 10 inches by 1¼ inch, and I'm going to give this one coat of white chalk paint. Let that dry. Now you can take your Cricut machine or your vinyl cutting machine and cut out a decal, or you could use Dollar Tree stickers. I'm going to freehand mine with an oil-based Sharpie marker, and we're just going to spell out Welcome Fall just like our inspiration piece. If you mess up, don't worry about it. You can just paint over it and start again. I'm going to dry brush some of that black chalk paint around the edging and then a little bit on top of the sign. This is not necessary, but I did want to have some of that distressed look on mine. Now we can attach this to our truck sign right where the original bumper is. So this is a perfect fit for each side. And see, I had originally started mine and I didn't have it in the center, so I did have to paint the back side and write it Welcome Fall again. We're going to attach that using some hot glue. And then to create the tail lights, grab a paintbrush that has a thick bottom, and then I'm using some red acrylic paint, and I'm going to dab the end of that paintbrush into my paint and then set this on top of the sign. Now, if you need to make those taillights a little larger than the bottom of your paintbrush, just twirl it around to make the size that you want. Now, you don't want too much extra paint because then it won't dry, but just enough so that it will give you that perfect circle, and then let that dry. So for our florals, I'm using this eucalyptus garland. This came from Dollar General and it was $3 and it was a lot longer. I've already used some of it on another project. So I'm gonna cut about 18 inches, then fold it over in half, and then put a piece of floral wire, wrap that around the center to hold it together. I'm also using one of Dollar Tree's pumpkin filler picks, some of their eucalyptus stems, and some of their wheat stems, but I will remove all of the leaves off of those and only use the wheat portion. Take a piece of pool noodle, cut it down to about 4 inches, and then cut that in half. We're going to be attaching our eucalyptus to the center of the pool noodle. Now mine's a little bit too long, so I'm going to take one of the leaves and fold it over to the center. And on the other side, I will do the same thing. Then take a longer piece of floral wire, wrap this around your eucalyptus piece as well as the pool noodle, pull that tight, and then twist it together on the top. I like to, after I cut the excess wire off, use a pair of pliers to twist that really tightly and make sure it's secured, and also to tuck it down to make sure that you don't poke yourself or cut yourself with that floral wire. And this is how it should be looking on the back side. Just make sure that all of your leaves are facing forward and that most of the pool noodle is covered up. Then I'll add in a few stems of the eucalyptus, And as for the pumpkin filler, I am going to cut my stems off of the bundle and also pull the pumpkins from the stems. So I'm just going to add in the leaves right now, then add in a few of the wheat pieces, trying to make sure that I keep them evenly distributed on the outside. And for the pumpkins, I'll pull those extra pieces off and hot glue just the pumpkin directly on top of the styrofoam pool noodle. And as you're holding your pumpkin in place, just see if you need to twist some of your leaves around to make sure that it looks nice and full. And once you have this looking exactly the way you want it, always go back and check and make sure all of that pool noodle is covered up. Now we can add a hanger to our sign using a piece of twine. I'm just going to feed that through the holes that were already in the sign and then tie a knot on each side so that I can pull the knot to the back side of the sign and cut the excess twine off. Once you have completed your hanger, it is time to add our floral pieces to the front. I'm going to use a really good amount of Gorilla Hot Glue to attach this to the truck sign. And for around $7, you have a gorgeous fall decor piece. For our final project, we will be recreating this green and white pumpkins woven blessed wreath. This is $44.99 at Kirkland's. It measures around 15.5 inches by 18 inches, and it has some beautiful pastel colored pumpkins as well as eucalyptus, white flowers, and white berries. I'm going to start by using 3 of these styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree. These are the ones that have the clips on the bottom. I've already removed all of the clips, and now I'm going to remove all of the stems. Then I'm going to take pieces of Dollar Tree barbecue skewers to insert into the bottom of each of these pumpkins to make it a lot easier for me to paint. I'm going to paint 2 of these with 2 coats of white chalk paint. And the third one, I will give that 2 coats of Waverly's chalk paint in the color Celery. Now, once these have dried, I'm going to take the paintbrush that I used for the celery chalk paint, dip that into a little bit of water and wipe most of the excess water off, and then dab the paintbrush to create the celery colored speckles on the top of the white pumpkins. For the celery pumpkin, I watered down some black paint, and I'm doing the same thing. Now, once that dried, it was a little too dark for me, so I'm going to dry brush some celery paint over each of those speckles. Using a brown chalk paint in the color Truffle, I'm going to paint each one of the pumpkin stems to make them look more realistic and less like plastic. Then, using 3 of Dollar Tree's berry picks, remove the leaf from the pick. And because I want these to be white to match our inspiration piece, I'm going to paint over these with some white chalk paint. You could also spray paint these. I do find that it is easier if you saturate your brush with some water as well as the white paint and dab it into the berries. Let that side dry, then flip over and do the back side. Now, I found this beauty at Family Dollar for $5, but Dollar General also sells like some blank tobacco baskets for around $3. They're a little bit smaller than this one. This one measures 10 inches by 10 inches, and as beautiful as it is, I want to recreate that Kirkland's piece. So I'm going to remove all of the embellishments they have inside of the basket, and then the sign that it came with, I am going to paint that with 1 coat of white chalk paint. Now, one side of it was white, but it was a shiny white, and I want mine to be more of a matte finish. Then this is totally optional, but I am distressing the outside edges with some brown acrylic paint to kind of bring the outline of that out. And then I'm using one of Hobby Lobby's wood word cutouts. Because it was slightly smaller to fit in my basket, I decided to add it to the sign that was originally in the basket using some hot glue. Then we can place this back inside of the tobacco basket using some Gorilla Hot Glue. We'll set that to the side for a moment. I'm going to be using some of this eucalyptus garland from Dollar General. This long piece was $3. And I'm going to take that end piece and feed it through the left side of my basket and pull all of those leaves through, and then take that end piece and go through the opposite side of the basket and pull that more towards the back. Then I'll take that and fold it over to the side to double it up. So I'll cut that excess off. And this is the same eucalyptus that we used in the previous project. So it's a pretty long piece. Going above the original section on the tobacco basket, I'm going to pull the eucalyptus garland through and then pull some of the leaves through each of those sections and do that around from one side to the other. Then using some floral wire from Dollar Tree, I'm going to feed that through the back side of the basket and attach the eucalyptus strands to that. Once I tighten that up, I will wrap it around the tobacco basket again and then feed it through the other side and then push it through the wire piece that's already attached to the basket and tighten it up again. This is just going to give it some added security. Then I like to tuck the end piece in and push it down to make sure it's not going to scratch anything. For the loose strands in the front, take a piece of floral wire and feed that between the strand and the pieces in the tobacco basket, and do the same thing by twisting it, cutting the excess, and then tucking that end piece down. You'll do this in several areas to secure the eucalyptus to the basket, and then we can hot glue our pumpkins in. Make sure that you're hot gluing them to the actual basket and not just the leaf. And you can rearrange some of your leaves around to make sure that they're not covering up the sign at the top. If you need to see that you need to add a few more pieces of floral wire, then you can do so, and then hot glue your third pumpkin in. Then I like to add the berries to make sure I like the placement of them. Then I can flip it over, and on the back side, secure those stems to the basket as well. And then I do wrap that floral wire around each of the stems just to make sure that they are secure and they're not going to fall out. Then I'm going to roll the end of that in to tuck it to make sure that it's flat, and so that it will sit flat against your door or your wall. And I'm using some of Hobby Lobby's white flowers, but you could also use some of Dollar Tree's Baby's Breath. You could hot glue these in, but the stems were long enough that I could twist them around just like I did the berries and secure them in the back with some floral wire. Now all we have to do is create a hanger using some twine, and I'm going to feed the ends through the loop, double knot it at the end, and cut that excess twine off. I hope you enjoyed today's projects. Let me know how I did in comparison to the Kirkland's inspiration pieces. If you have a favorite, let me know in the comment section down below. I always love to know which one is your favorite. And if you're new and you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to click that subscribe button below. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I'll see you guys next time.